Welcome back to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. Today, I know I'm always excited to bring someone to the podcast every time, but I'm going to be excited again. We had Darren Price, really cool one. He's a multi-store owner and with Price Pharmacies in Kansas, I believe South Kansas, where a lot of them are. NCPA board member. I don't know if anyone remembers, but about not quite a year and a half ago, but back in February of last year, spoke at the White House with like Mark Cuban and Chi-Chi and with the help and support of all of you listening and NCPA. Spoke to the FTC, both from a pharmacy perspective and a PBM perspective. So multi-store owner, which is great, huge pillar of their community. They really are, but also leaning in to help start OreadRx, which is a transparent PBM. And so what they've been able to do is really help like at local levels with large employers at local levels, unbundle kind of vertically integrated medical and pharmacy benefit delivery to, hey, we can typically save someone a ton of money from a pharmacy benefit perspective, but also provide a better experience with patients with a pharmacy network that's being reimbursed fair. And I know that sounds like a huge, fair shouldn't be a thing, but it is. But it is. So it's a great podcast. He talks so much about all of that work he's doing. And so we'll take you there now. I just had Benjamin Jolly on, who spoke to like, I don't know, 20, 30,000 people about PBM reform and all of that, which was huge. And then now, with you, one of the few people who've actually been to the White House and spoke. And, I got kicked out of there once, but I didn't get invited. So, a little different circumstances than yours. But, but can you, I guess before we like get into like all the PBM stuff that like you guys are doing in reform, like I just wanted to like understand, what was that experience like? You represented the industry really well. I think everybody hat tips to you, but what was that like?
I appreciate that. You leave those things and you always think you could do better, or like I should have said this or should have focused on this more, but it was really hard to pack in everything you needed to in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So they gave Mark Cuban a lot longer than they gave me. It was quite a deal. Just what led up to that, it just kind of spiraled. It was going to be like a short, like 10-minute Zoom call is what it started out. And
really?
Then it just like escalated because I think the Biden administration was trying to really tout their, the Medicare reduction program that they're doing where they're, negotiating with drug manufacturers. And I think they're really trying to highlight pharma and the problems with PBMs at that point. So it just got escalated there, like Ronna Hauser, NCPA was the one that afforded me the opportunity, obviously. And Ronna Hauser called me. It's like, hey, you want to do this quick 10, 15-minute Zoom call? I'm like, oh, absolutely. Let's do it. And then like 10 minutes later, she called me back. She's like, well, this has actually been escalated. You're actually going to do this in the White House. And I was like, the actual White House?
That's what a part of me was like, where are they in the White House? Part of me was just like, just from the logistics and mechanics of it all. I was just so fascinated with, I didn't know they did things.
And then she's like, I'll try to get a guest list to figure out, who else is going to be there. And then she called me back like 10 minutes later and they're like, okay, we're going to have two people from the private sector. And it's going to be you and Mark Cuban. And I was like, what?
Okay.
Zoom call to, you're sitting next to Mark Cuban at the White House.
Okay.
It was kind of crazy. So it was fun. I mean, it was once in a lifetime opportunity that I wouldn't let it pass out.
Oh, no. And I think between you and I think even Mark tried to represent the industry as well.
Sure.
Well as he could too. And obviously Chi-Chi did great too. So it was good to see real independent pharmacies really being represented in that forum for sure. So I just wanted to understand, like, what was I'm so curious about what it was like for you. As far as prep goes for that, do they is it really just like, hey, look, this is going to be your time, your window and your time, and like you just go and is that it?
I mean, I wrote down what I wanted to say and then got that to, Doug and Ronna, and they helped me mean, they didn't change what I wanted to say, but they just kind of made me sound smarter and better.
Yeah, yeah. That's what Brandon's here for me. That's all right.
Less English, you know.
It's,
So,
it's Brandon's job.
and then you have to like do a background check in order to get in there, and then you go through security. It takes like 30 to 45 minutes to get through all that stuff to get to the room, and then once you get in there, it's just like, man, this is the room where they have all these press conferences and everything. It just was very surreal. But it was funny when we were walking in there, the security guard like was on his he was like texting or looking at social media on his cell phone and didn't even look up as we went through. I'm like, well, I'm glad that it's the same at a QT gas station or the White House.
Right. No different than TSA, really.
You've got the people that are just staring at their phones and not actually working. But
that's true. I think I romanticize all of that too much to where I'm like,
oh,
they're just people. Everything's just people.
It's not a normal deal, and that's what I try to tell myself. It's just kind of nerve wracking going in there with, given 5 minutes to try to make an impact for your industry, and so what do you say? How do you say it? But, as independent pharmacies, we know more about it than everybody in that room, and so just trying to convey what we see on a day-to-day basis. And then, with PBM knowledge that I've gained over the last several years, that's been, very helpful in explaining what's going on in the industry.
Yes. Speaking of, so I think you also, obviously you spoke at the White House. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
That was February of last year.
It was February. It was last year. Okay.
February of last year. Yeah.
And then you've also spoke to the FTC as well. And
yeah, we just actually got invited to the FTC just recently, and spoke to them it was a great meeting. It was supposed to last an hour and it lasted 3.
That was always good. That's always good.
It was fantastic, and just kind of highlighting some of the things that we see from a PBM standpoint and from a pharmacy standpoint, just making them really understand the drug distribution network, what's actually going on.
Right.
Was awesome. But we were really excited about the opportunity to do that.
That's good. So, I'll say this. I know everyone listening probably owes a lot of credit to you and all the people behind you. That's NCPA and that's Bill. That's everybody like in your entire ecosystem that help you and you guys help each other. But
I never understood the impact NCPA has on our profession until I was more in the weeds with NCPA. But, Doug, Rana, and Seiler, all those guys, they bleed independent community pharmacy, and they work so hard on behalf of members. And I think we forget that as independent community pharmacies, and we're in it all the time, and we see the bad reimbursements and all the bad things that are happening. But it makes you upset, right? And you point the blame to somebody. Why is it something happening? But I guarantee you, it's not on any of those individuals. They are day in and day. I don't know how they do it. They work twice as hard as I do, and they represent us extremely well.
Yeah. And speaking of that, so like you're one of, in my opinion, like a super unique spot where you're part of obviously you're an independent pharmacy owner who's worked with Bill Osborne and all of that stuff. You've expanded, you've grown, you've had one pharmacy, now you have more than one, but also you've got this other pillar of information now and like foundation and what you bring to the table with a lot of those discussions, which is like being part of a transparent PBM as well. And I'm sure that's something you're even more passionate about due to the climate we're in.
Absolutely. It's the most rewarding, and it's amazing to discover your true passion. That is my true passion, is to change the way the industry operates. Like my dream is kind of what's happened in my community. Okay. So in my community, the school district, the hospital, the city, the local college, several local businesses all use our PBM, and it's transparent pass through.
Man,
and it
hold
pays.
on for just a second though. That's huge.
Oh,
I just want
it's
to like, I'm going to give you a little bit of applause. That's huge in a good way. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And so like each one of those entities, depending on their size, are saving $1 million annually on
oh, wow.
their drug spend. You know what I mean? And so like that's where my kids go to school. It's where I live. And I don't steer people to myself. I don't pay
Right.
myself differently than anybody else in the network.
Right.
Like we pay everybody fairly. And so it can all happen. It's the way it's supposed to be. So like our school district last year, for example, got a 18% decrease in their premiums. They give their employees a premium free holiday every December.
18% decrease. Like
Decrease.
who can even remotely say that when you're
Everybody
buying?
else did a 30% increase.
No, yeah, no way, man.
And
Everyone's
so
moving cost sharing to employees because it's costing so much.
absolutely they are. And so that's why what we're doing right now, I feel like is just more critical than ever. People are kind of running towards self-funding and being able to unbundle your benefits and use the separate partners like it should be. I mean, PBM shouldn't just be put in place because they're owned by the insurance company. They should have to compete for that business, right? And so that's what we've lost in the marketplace. There is no free market. Once you choose United Healthcare, you're getting Optum, and so there's no choice. And so that's what's wrong, obviously, with the industry. And that's what we're trying to fix. And the biggest reward for me is to fix it. And because it's almost unbelievable, Mark, like we're working on a deal right now with a large employer. And I mean, we're going to save them $5 million annually on the drug spend. And
Wow.
when you say that to somebody, it's almost like this can't be true, like they're lying. But when we actually get the group and actually show it, they're like, man, you were right. Why didn't we do this 10 years ago? And so, and that's when Mark Cuban at the White House said, like, the fix here is for all employers to stop doing business with the big three. Look at other options, and he's exactly right. 1000% right. And, we almost have 100 groups on our platform now, with Oread. And every single one of those groups sees it. I mean, we have never had a group where we get in there and it was a bad decision to go self-funding and to carve out your PBM. Not one
wow.
single time.
Wow. That's hat tip to you. Is that in that regard, is that mostly when you're saying those 100 groups, you're really converting them from like a really large kind of PBM out in the marketplace we're all familiar with in some way, typically, right?
Yeah, usually they're moving away from the big three.
Got it.
They're going. They were with a fully traditional insured product, and they're moving to a self-funded, unbundled product. But not always. Sometimes and that was one of my frustrations with the marketplace, and one of the reasons why we started Oread was because, any PBM can say that they're pass-through and transparent, and in our experience, 90% of them that say that aren't actually. And so that's. I tried to partner with several PBMs before we started our own, just because I didn't, I wanted to be a pharmacist. But I saw really quickly that this industry is very, very tainted. And just because somebody starts on the right path doesn't mean they're going to stay on the right path. And so
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. And it's very easy. I mean, once, you look at, if you just keep 1% a rebate or 5% a rebate, it turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It turns out a lot of money real quick.
Get rich really quickly. But, and that's why we wrote our contract the way we did. We can't do that. There's zero misaligned incentives in our layout. And so, yeah, I mean, it's what the industry needs, and really happy to be able to provide it.
What are some of the barriers we're breaking down as far as like educational stuff? Like, and what I mean by that is, I imagine when you're going into a group that has done business that I'll just call it the traditional way, and purchase benefits the traditional way. From that perspective, there's probably a little bit of like turning everything on their head a little bit sometimes, of like, I just didn't know this. You know what I mean? Like, it just sounds like as much of a like buying journey as it is a educational journey for the folks leaning into this.
Yeah. And you've got some more corruptness in the middle too, so
Oh, so
almost,
the TPAs and stuff like that, is that kind of?
oh yeah, that too, but
Yeah.
brokers as well,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of brokers out there that are making more money for prescription pharmacies are, um,
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
so, it's kind of sickening that some of the stuff that we found, and we call it out, like we're not afraid to call it out. And, but there are some really great brokers out there. We're working with some really good ones right now. So they're kind of the gatekeeper in all this, Mark.
Okay.
And they've built a relationship with that client for 10, 15, 20 years sometimes, and so they're really ingrained with that client on what that client knows about healthcare. And so if they're a good one, then right now they're looking at self-funding, and doing something different because it's become unaffordable for people, for all the reasons that we've said. But if they're not, then it is really, really tough to get in there, educate the client, and break up that relationship.
Got it.
We've been able to do it sometimes, but in a lot of cases we haven't. And then, yeah, especially like publicly funded entities,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really have a CFO or a CEO that is directly affecting their paycheck, their bonus at the end of the year
That's
or
fair.
whatever.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Even though it is, and then, I mean, that's one of the disconnects, right? People don't understand my employer's having to pay more for health insurance because of this vertical integration. Therefore, I'm not getting raises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For real.
Don't correlate it, right? All they know is
Yeah.
they're paying a premium and that's it. But they
Mm-hmm.
don't correlate it with the health of their business. And that's what we've seen, especially the last 3 years, is businesses are not, like you said, they're shifting some of that cost share to the employee because they can no longer afford it as the business. And so it is really, when we go in there and try to explain all that to somebody that is, HR, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really difficult. It takes, I say usually when you start talking to a group, it takes about 3 years for them
I was gonna
to,
say that sale, like I know I'm a sales guy, so I talk this stuff. That sales cycle must be
it's a long
lengthy.
play.
Yeah. 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 You're not.
But it's like I said, and then I think maybe that's part of the rewarding part is you tell the story over and over and over again, and then finally the light bulb clicks on, and they make a change. And you know, uh, one of our groups, they're really scared about being able to fund claims, and they're a decent sized group, I think 100, no, 300 life group, and at the end of the year, they had $1 million left over in their claims reserve, and so
I
that $1 million would have gone to somebody, like we would just gone to,
Yeah, it wouldn't have been left on the table at all.
it
Yeah.
never is, right? Like
Yeah.
they overfund premiums and then they just keep what's left at the end of the day. And then give you a 20 to 30% increase for the next year because they
Yeah, and then tell you, hey, inflation's inflation, right? Here's
yeah.
12%. Yeah. Um,
And so, like I said, super rewarding when we can go in and actually make that happen for people. It's been a
um,
cool
oh
thing.
God, it sounds cool. Like I'd love to can you talk to a little bit of so that's kind of I'll just call it the client side of the PBM business. There's probably the network side and getting a pharmacy network in place that one will say yes to this. And I'm sure with you help that a lot, and y'all's business model helps a lot. It's got to be
Sure.
pretty rewarding to walk into some of these pharmacies and they're a part of just being part of an organization, even just as a network participant, um, just to be paid fairly is
Yeah.
probably a relief.
Yeah. Yeah. One of cool relationships that we've made is with True Care, pharmacy in El Dorado. And they actually introduced us to a client, because they were just getting underpaid on everything, and, so we won the account, got the client, and now we're paying the pharmacy fairly, and if they ever have an issue with anything, like they text me.
Probably doesn't scale, Darren, but yeah.
We want to, I don't care how big we get, it's going to be a mom and pop business. That's the only way I know how to do business.
I love that. Yeah.
And, I don't care how big it gets. We're always going to have people in place to be able to provide that level of customer service. But, it just gets me thinking, like, what if every pharmacy was an advocate for, their local employer groups? And going back to what I said, like what's happened in this town, what if we could do that in every town across America? Like
100%.
how would things change and look different? If we could tell the story and it always irritates me, Mark, whenever I talk to a pharmacy that's using, just regular insurance. They're doing business with people that are trying to put them out of business,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have to,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
fair.
sometimes you don't have
Yep.
a choice, but in a lot of cases, they can't fill their own prescriptions for their own employees, or they don't want to because they're losing money when they do it, so why are we allowing that to happen? Let's do it differently. And especially as a pharmacy, you're in a unique position because, I mean, your cost of dispensing a prescription to one of your employees should be the cost that it costs you to buy the drug. That should be it. Plus a small admin fee for the PBM. That should be all, and so you should really be able to save a lot of money on your drug expense as a pharmacy. So if you're big enough and don't have a lot of, sick employees, then self insurance is you should be doing it yesterday.
Oh, wow. You kind of went there, and I wanted to like go further with that. So if I'm a pharmacist in name some county in Tennessee or New Mexico or whatever from that perspective, and like how to think about approach from a network. Like, obviously, not everyone's going to build their own transparent PBM from that perspective, but like, what do you think some of the what can be done at their level
Yeah.
inside their local either
So
branches or whatever it is from that perspective to try to like start some of this? Obviously, it's a long play. We all know that now, but
yeah,
those conversations going.
sure. Yeah. And so I go back to the first conversation that I had with our local superintendent when we first started to maybe look at doing something different with them. He came into my office and he said, "Hey, my broker just told me that our premiums were going up 30% next year because of drug spend." And so he was like, why are you guys charging us so much for drugs? Is what he said to me. And so that was an opportunity for me to explain how things actually work. Right. And so we went down the rabbit hole of, we're actually making less money than we ever have before, and so there's this company in the middle that is overcharging you and underpaying us and keeping a lot of money in the middle. And so he's like, really? And so then he started talking to his broker, like, hey, I want to look at doing something different besides a vertically integrated company. Let's go get some quotes and just see what it could look like. And then we were able to actually get some data and show a huge price spreading. And we were able to show that they were incentivizing mail order and paying themselves way more than they're paying local pharmacies and trying to drive people to that, And so we were able to show all the bad things that were happening in the plan. And so then, again, this took a couple of years of having this conversation. And then, as a PBM, I was able to go present some information to their health committee and tell them about what was going on and why it was a bad thing. And then they just had the courage to pull the trigger and they fired their brokerage and hired another one that would look at doing something different. And I tell people that all the time, like, if your broker is not looking at doing something different, you should look at one that is. And so then they had the courage to actually do it. And they have more than seen the fruits of what can happen when you decide to, go unbundled, self-insured, and take the power back of your health insurance for your employees. So, I mean, that's a great example of how to just start the conversation, keep having the conversation, bring in experts to have the conversation with whoever's needed, and, just keep pushing with these people, and finally they'll get it eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's like highlights. I think every podcast highlights this, to be honest, but highlights the reason to just stay involved in like your local community whether it's public health from like a vaccination perspective, or it's the local employers, especially the larger ones or the county ones that you utilize those services of that they provide. Like it just again highlights to me
Well, and
the
what was
need
cool,
to do
Mark,
that.
is like once the city heard about what the school district was doing, then they wanted to look at it. And then, once the local college heard about what the school district was doing, they wanted to look at it, and then the hospital started looking at it. And like, so I was able, and I knew all those people because, I'm active in our community, and like all local pharmacies are, I feel like. So we have more power to influence than we think. I think it's easy to be a defeatist and to put your head in the sand and say, gosh, this is never going to get any better. And, I get it. Like politically, that's a frustrating process, right? But this is a way that we can actually go win another way, so I'm not saying we should stop beating on the doors of our politicians and all that, but go talk to your local employers about what they're seeing with their health insurance. And, I'm always happy to have those conversations about what it can look like. And, if we can get data, we can show some bad things that are happening. And I don't know, there's just ways that you can talk to your local people and make them at least think about doing something different.
Oh, for sure. In that regard, I guess, as far as like, they could just, like really from that perspective, you're bringing in, after that, it's probably like, hey, look, you're willing to really look at this. It's probably bringing someone in who knows how to handle that data from that perspective in some way. And it's like you said, if the broker's not willing, you would love that conversation to be like, your other champion is their broker too, as well. Yeah. And if it's not, then it's probably you're multi-threading. Yeah, you're multi-threading into the org and figuring out who your champions could be to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really cool when all the light bulbs go off, and it's able to, again, there are win-win-wins out there. It's a win for the employer, win for the pharmacy, and win for their clients, their customers.
Yeah. The patients probably, you've probably lowered copay. Like, is that some of the success stories where it's like, sure, you're saving employers a ton of money. And maybe that's even led to raises, which is huge. In some way, whether it was going to be a 1%, maybe now it's 2.5 or 3 or 4 or whatever it is, but also like probably just a better experience from a out of pocket perspective and access perspective for the patients too.
Well, because we don't own our own specialty pharmacy, we don't own our own mail order facility. We want business to happen locally. Like we do everything we can to have specialty meds filled locally, and so if you're on this is a terrible example, but on a Humira, like that's getting mailed to you. It's sitting on a dock somewhere for 2 weeks, and then you get it. And you have no idea how to use it or what it's for. I've had several customers come in and be like, what do I do with this? And the box is all beat up, and it's like a $10,000 med,
looks like Ace Ventura kicked the box, like like where he's delivering the package.
Like a car that you're bringing into me, and it's, but, so now they just go to their local pharmacy and get it. And then, there's counseling's able to happen. You can put them on adherence programs. You'll have trouble getting the med, there's just so many good things that happen from when people use their local resources rather than having to use a mail order facility or a specialty mail order facility for stuff. Now, there are some products that have to be, that are limited distribution, that there's only 2 or 3 pharmacies in the whole country that can
handle them. Yeah.
But, those are kind of few and far between. Most of the other things can be dispensed locally. It should be dispensed locally. There's a lot of value there.
Yeah. I guess 2 last things to wrap up in that section. So when I do think sometimes when, I think less so now, but more so maybe in the past, when you're trying to educate these, I'll just call it like these entities in your local network to try to like get them to go this route. You're usually exploring self-funding. And I think that can seem scary at first, but I think there's, I guess, can you help handle the objection, I guess, with some of the pharmacists that hopefully an army of folks just start having these conversations over time, and how to handle like that particular kind of scary, or at least kind of sound scary topic.
It's so funny. We are so addicted to health insurance in this country.
Yeah.
And the big health insurance companies have done a fantastic job in brainwashing everybody into thinking that we have to have it. It's just crazy to me. And self-funding, the word itself, I wish we could call it something different.
I know. We need to rebrand self-funding, in my opinion.
Something, yeah. It sounds like you're paying your own bills, and so if you've got a pediatric cancer patient, like the hospital's going to charge you directly, and that's not how it works. Even your fully insured traditional products have what you call stop loss or reinsurance.
Right.
So this is the amount of money that you're going to pay, period, on an individual and on an aggregate for the whole group. And so you are never going to pay more than this amount of money. And that's how premiums are set, right? And so the same thing happens in self-funding. It's exactly the same as it would in a fully insured product. There's no difference. The only difference is your pool is bigger, right? And so in a fully funded program. So theoretically, you should have to pay less in premiums, but that is not what we're seeing.
Maybe that wasn't 40 years ago, but yeah.
20 years ago, absolutely. That was the purpose of insurance: get this big pool of people, spread the risk, and keep premiums low. But what we're seeing now is the artificial inflation of drug prices, the artificial inflation of primary care, hospital visits, all of the things, right?
Diagnostics, especially too, right?
Diagnostics, all that stuff. And so all of that stuff is artificially higher than it needs to be. And so that causes premiums to go up. But when you go to a self-funded program that, has a good TPA, has a good PBM, we have the true cost of everything, right? Not the inflated cost of everything. So that actually does cause premiums to come down because of that, no matter if it's a smaller pool or not, because you're spending so much less in all of these things that the big insurance companies are overcharging for. And so that's why our clients don't see raises in premiums. And they actually see reductions in premiums a lot of the time. So
you're layering on that safety net of stop loss or reinsurance from that perspective. So if you have something that happens from a spike perspective, that you're covered in that regard.
And it's actually a lot of times more safe, because what happens, for example, and I know enough about this to be dangerous. I'm not an expert on the medical side.
I clearly am not.
If you've got a surgery that needs to happen, and you've got this huge hospital in Kansas City where it is $100,000 to have that surgery. But if you have maybe a smaller surgery center in Wichita, Kansas, and it's $10,000 to have that surgery.
Oh, yeah.
So in a fully insured product, those are both in network. You can have either one of those choices. And so, sometimes we think bigger is better, which is not always the case. We know that in pharmacy, right?
Yep.
And so they'll go to that $100,000 option instead of the 10. Well, in a self-funded program, you can really steer people to the cheaper option. Now you want to be careful, because you still want them to have choice, and you want them to, still have quality too. It's not that $100,000 option is better than the 10,000. It's just different, right? And so you can steer them to that $10,000 option. So now you just save $90,000 on one surgery, and so it's little things like that you can do being self-funded that help with true savings, versus being a fully funded traditional insurance product.
Yeah. And I imagine that, like, I've seen examples like this where somebody was going to Oklahoma for, I think this one particular manufacturer, I think the story was like a manufacturer, but like not a drug manufacturer. I know we're in pharmacy. We're used to talking about that. But some other type of manufacturer, and they had a lot of folks with knee issues or whatever it was. I couldn't remember what it was. So they just contracted with someone in Oklahoma whose quality scores are through the roof, like crazy quality at like 30% of the price that the normal, like, I'm not trying to like disparage large health systems or anything like that, but that was started. We found somebody who's like more of an independent provider from that perspective that or a group of independent providers are like, hey, we'll take great care, and experience is even good. It's like,
Sure.
I don't know. So
Infusion's a perfect example. Most things could be done like by a home infusion company, and you do it right there in your home. We can get the drug through a local pharmacy. That way it qualifies for rebates. And usually those are a tenth of the price of if you went to a hospital, had it infused.
Right. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. And so white bagging gets a bad rap, and probably justifiably so, because, the PBM is just steering that drug to themselves.
Like a volume steerage perspective. Yeah, it probably does get it rightfully so in ways.
Yeah. Oh, when it's done right, when you've got a $10,000 drug that there's $5,000 rebate that can go back to the client. So you reduce the cost of that med by half, and then it costs you a tenth of the price to infuse it. I mean, there are some real savings there, right? And so I can see both sides where it can be a bad thing, but it can also be a really good thing as far as quality and savings go.
Yeah. No, that's huge. I know it doesn't take a lot of patients for that to add up either. Like you're talking one patient sometimes can save someone a lot of money there.
Yeah. Usually in any given plan, 90% of your expenses, period, are like 10% of your people. And so you fix the problem for like 3 or 4 people, then you can greatly impact what they're spending.
For sure. I guess last thing, before we leave that topic, would be like, so if we get a question, few listeners now, it's all because of the guests, not because of me on this podcast. And if they wanted to like, hey, look, I actually have some momentum with local stuff, but they probably really need, I'll just say, more structured experience, like a traditional experience that can be provided. Is that something we just put your website in the show notes and they can just throw it in there? Okay. Great. I don't want to put your cell phone in the show notes.
No, we created this company to solve the industry problem. Like we saw what the problem was. We know how to fix it. That's what I want to do. And so, yeah, my email address, you can email me. You can find it on the website. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Well, it's exciting to hear the progress you're making. I remember I talked to you years ago. I think I was in Kansas, and we're just now kind of talking about this, or might have just started. I'm not sure, and it's just like it's good to see.
We didn't know
win.
We had no idea whether it was going to work or not, and also didn't know how dirty it actually was. Like we had a pretty good idea of the problems that were going on and the bad things that were happening, but they were way worse than we actually thought.
And I can't imagine a broker making more dollars on scripts than the pharmacy. That's crazy. That's the craziest thing I've heard.
It happens. It's probably less so than one would think, but there are situations out there we've found that it is happening.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into I've already taken up a lot of our time with that. But that's such an important topic, in my opinion, that I wanted to give it its time. So I know you've super motivated by your community needs. I think I could hear it in how you talk about the PBM stuff as well. And I think as you've grown your pharmacy, I'll call it footprint, and with the way reimbursements are, I think you've had to fill gaps in other communities as well, and employ a little bit of probably a unique, although probably necessary, like hub and spoke approach to it. Can you speak to that a little bit as you've grown?
Yeah. So we started out with just back in 2010 with 2 pharmacies, and then we grew to 6 in 2019. And then, today we're at 9 locations, and actually we just bought another one, but just moved the files in. So bought 10 pharmacies in total. But you're right. I don't know. It's a passion of mine that communities have local resources and pharmacies for healthcare. And I really don't want to buy pharmacies, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it's a little like you're kind of a reluctant. Like, no, I talked to you about it. You always kind of sounds like you're mixed on it too.
I don't want to do it. Yeah, but I also don't want those pharmacies just to close, or those pharmacies to sell their files to Walgreens or Dell or Kroger brand or whatever. And so it's just, I've gotten in a certain example or certain situations where I'm like, okay, let's just do it. I bet we can make it work, And so we've grown significantly over the past 15 years. And you definitely have to figure out ways to make it efficient and reduce expenses, right? And so the hub and spoke model is great. Although the PBMs will fight you tooth and nail. I'm going through a huge audit right now because they don't like me sharing inventory amongst my stores, which is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
But anyway, that's, our packaging kind of takes place centrally. Our compounding takes place centrally. And some of our filling takes place centrally. And so that just helps, especially some of the smaller stores that are busier and it's hard to find, employees, today. And it just helps relieve some of the pressure of, getting some packaging program, some packaging patients that you have to do, being able to do that at a central location to where they have a machine and it's able to help them, but you can't afford to buy a machine.
Yeah. You can't buy one of those in every location.
No, not at all. But it's such a cool, like the strip packing is so cool. It's such a great thing for patients, and I love it for our patients, and I want to be able to provide that to our customer base, but you just can't if you can't do it centrally. And so it's really helped us. That hub and spoke model has really helped us, be able to take some of those services to smaller communities, smaller stores. Otherwise, they wouldn't have existed to. So yeah, it's been kind of a wild ride because, got that going on while we're trying to grow the PBM as well. And so there's a lot going on and, but it's all, it's all great stuff.
What about, just a little hey, what a tip from you to what to watch for? You mentioned audit stuff, from there. Do you have a, hey, watch out for this for folks, stuff that you're seeing? From that perspective, I just spent some time on some insulins and some stuff like that. Just this past few months, actually, of trying to help from our perspective, in the product itself, or just an awareness perspective that the system can do this, because patients' insulin dosages can change all the time, and there's these 30-day, 90-day supply rules that everyone listening, if you're dispensing on a regular basis, probably know exactly what I'm talking about, that at now can be unappealable in an audit. So
I think, what we do is we, employ a company that, identifies claims that are likely to be audited. And, they get those to our teams before the audit happens, and so we kind of have a champion at every store that gets those reports, goes through all those claims and just make sure we have all the documentation and that we've done it correctly, because then you can fix it, in that, 30-day window, 60-day window, 90-day window, you could fix it before you get audited a year later and get that money taken back. And so, and that's kind of grueling work and it's kind of boring work, but we do have somebody at every store that does that. And I think we've been able to, be successful and not getting a lot of recruitments because of those things. So, I mean, that's probably the one thing I would say is, even if you don't use a company, look at your higher costs, cause they're not, auditing you on the HCTZs of the world. Look at your higher cost claims and just double check those to make sure, have a process in place for somebody to double check those to make sure that they're correct.
Makes total sense. I guess before we wrap up a little bit, I was gonna we also get a lot of new owners that listen to this, and you've been a new owner, and we get folks that start up, and we get a little more, I'll just say, traffic in regards to with all the closures happening and all the Rite Aid shutting down and things like that, trying to figure out, man, is there a gap that someone would rather go fill instead of trying to go figure out another job at another spot somewhere. So do you have and you've had to figure out how to get really efficient, I feel with your hub and spoke model, you guys, because obviously you can't Sounds like you can't economically, the economics don't support having strip packaging everywhere. You got to centralize it. There's probably technology you believe in some way, and I don't mean pioneer when I say this, but like ways to just get efficient. You have any like, hey, here's something that I believe in, or here's something that we lean into, helps us get more out of the staff from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's like beating a dead horse, but MedSync is super important for our organization. You know, I mean, I think we've got some stores that are like 90% of our business is on MedSync.
Oh, man,
you know,
that's high. Nice.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. And so when we get a new patient, like that's the first conversation that we have with them. Is, you know, let's get you on MedSync, and it'll make your life easier and ours. And so having a good process for that is crucial, you know, because you screw it up a few times and people lose trust in what you're doing. And so having a technology partner that makes it easy, simple, straightforward, communication is good, easy to, you know, verify everything that patient's taking. I mean, that's crucial. Cause without that, you're reacting every day, and all of your time is just sucked away in reacting to all the problems that happen in normal pharmacy. So I would say before you do anything, that is number one in your business. I mean, get your MedSync program up to 70% or higher.
Wow. All right.
And,
that's good.
Yeah, that's the way that you free up some time and are able to, you know, look at how you make money and look at all these different programs and things.
Yeah. I've been trying to think through. I've been like, I talk about it like playing offense and defense, and like that's the one thing that can free you up to start playing offense a little bit,
Absolutely.
you know.
And even if you're on offense, even if you're not starting new programs or doing all this other stuff, it gives you time to look at what you are doing. Like, you know, what insurances are good for me, what insurance is bad, what drugs are good, what drugs are bad, and then make some actual decisions about your business. You know, it's funny, whenever I started as an owner, I mean, you wanted more business. You didn't care what it was. It was a volume game. The more business you had, the better. But today, sometimes the more business you have, the quicker you go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you really have to be intentional about the business that you pick up. So, you know, when these Walgreens are closing, the Rite Aids are closing, you got to be careful on the patients that you take on and the drugs that you are filling for them. Or, you know, it doesn't matter if you do 1,000 prescriptions today. If you're averaging, you know, $2 per prescription on those $1,000, you're going out of business.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So you got to really be intentional about that kind of thing today. And I know as pharmacists, we feel obligated to just fill everything for everybody, but unfortunately, it's not the sandbox that's been created for us. And so being able to say no and being able to work with patients to help them get it elsewhere is a reality of how you have to do things today, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's true. You got to get comfortable being mildly uncomfortable with
Yep.
some of those discussions. And
Yeah, it's not comfortable. It's not fun. I hate doing it, but
yeah, nobody got into pharmacy to do that either, right?
No.
So
no, they didn't. But it's the PBM's fault that we are in this scenario, you know. And those stories are great to tell your congressman or congresswoman, you know. But it's just it's the way it is.
Yeah, no, it is. Hey man, I really appreciate all the time you gave us today. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure you just get out into the ecosystem from your perspective? I have one final question before you go, but
Okay, yeah,
it's a little more fun.
I would implore everybody to, you know, start having conversations with your local employers about what you are seeing at your pharmacy. I know we have gag clauses between PBMs and pharmacies on what we can and can't talk about with local employers, but, you know, talk to them on a high level on what you're seeing, what's going on. And, you know, like I said, my dream is that we create all these community models to where we're, you know, partnering with local, you know, with a transparent pass-through PBM and doing business locally. You know, that's my dream for pharmacy, and I hope it, you know, goes that direction. And so don't be afraid to have those conversations. Please get out there and do it.
Yeah. And network, man. Darren's everywhere. Darren's everywhere. Other people doing this are everywhere. Like just network such a corporate-y thing to say, but I don't know. It's just put your hand up and go, man, let me ask you questions. And that's literally it, what's been great about this, especially everyone at NCPA, and everyone else has just been so like no questions, dumb, which is just talk. Like, yeah, and this is how I would help, or this is how I would do it. So like, just put your hand up. I look at that too. All right, before we leave, I have one question for you, but it's just our little segment called Prescribables, man, and that's what it's called. It's just what are you reading, watching, listening to, or doing? It doesn't have to be one of all of those, just one of those that you think others might be into.
So that just in general, that doesn't have
Just
to
in general. Yeah. Bruno from California was on here talking about pickleball. He's got super into that. But
cool. Well, so I guess two things. So I'm a coach, so I coach I've got three little boys. And so I spend a lot of time coaching the three little boys. As you just read a book, and I can't remember what the guy's name that wrote it was, but it's called Inside Out Coaching. Is the name of the book. And he was a former NFL player, and he became a little league coach. And then I think he's coaching a high school now, but just kind of giving back to his community. And it just kind of, I love that kind of stuff, but it applies to my business too, coaching my employees. It just, you don't know the influence that you have over people, especially young individuals. He talks about, sometimes you spend more time with your coach than you do, your pastor, sometimes your teacher, your parent sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you have a huge responsibility as a coach to show that young man or woman, not only how to play a sport, but, how you convert those concepts to succeed in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always look for those kind of books, and it is by far and away the best coaching sports book that I've ever read.
All right. Okay.
So I highly recommend that. And the other one is Ted Lasso.
Dude, I love Ted Lasso. Yeah.
I don't know why, but I have not watched it. I've almost pushed it away for so long. I don't know why. I thought it was more like slapstick comedy.
I did too.
It's not at all. It's a little deep, and that's so my wife and I, Renee, we watch it as much as we can. I hardly ever see it anymore, but as much as we're together, I'm sure you can relate, Mark. But we've been watching that, so I would highly recommend it.
That's a good one. I love Ted Lasso. It's surprisingly deep, man. Like the real or whatever it is, like it deals with real stuff. I for some reason didn't think, I never gave it time either until like 2 years ago. And I just did a podcast, so this is going to be redundant for some folks, but I listened to the Acquired podcast just as more like, hey, these are the playbooks these companies ran. So I always recommend that one. They did a good piece on Epic, the EHR, and did a profile on the lady who started it. And she was really like a Bill Gates level genius, and just didn't like where Bill Gates built something really broad, everybody can build on. He went super vertical in really large, complex health systems. So it was just like, and it was definitely playing a 100-year game or 20-year game, not a 4-year, 5-year deal. So it was a really cool podcast from there. And then, Brandon, you're going to hear this again, but I'm watching White Lotus right now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is about the most kind of awful people in funny situations, though. So it's a really weird show. It took 2 episodes for you to go, all right, I'm going to finish it, but it's only 6 episodes for the first season, so not bad. But it was they're really terrible people, but anyway, it's been fun though. So
it's nice to just be able to turn your brain off sometimes.
It really is. It really is. It's just kind of wild, but it's good. Well, man, hey, Derek, I thank you for being on, Dan. This like you're doing a lot for the. I really, we're all rooting for you, especially not even from a pharmacy perspective, but what you're doing on that PBM side. We'll drop the site and the show notes and all that stuff. So if anybody wants to reach out and try to figure out how to do a little bit of what Darren's doing in their local community and you feel like you need some help.
Sounds good, Mark. Really appreciate what you guys are doing as well. And always appreciate being a guest on here.
No, absolutely. Well, all right, man. Well, bye, everybody. Have a good one.